Hey, everybody. Welcome to another interview with the Cerulean project. I'm excited to have you guys here this weekend. And our guest that we have, Lewis, back from last year, which was awesome talking to him. I found it highly informative. Really excited to hear what he's got to share with us this week. So we'll bring him on in. And
Hey,
there he is. How's it going, man?
good, dude. I just got to say that new animated intro was epic.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm slowly building it. It was some stock stuff that I found on Canva. So it was pretty awesome to just kind of find already like
Nice,
pre-built intros that you can just change out the typography in and stuff like that. So
dude.
I'll
Good effort.
add some music to it next year and stuff and have a little bit better transitions. Each year I try to like learn something new and do something new that's improved, I guess, on the last year. So I'm glad you like it.
Looks good, man. Looks really good.
Thank you. How was your weekend?
Amazing, amazing. Yeah. I mean, I have a toddler, so it's like which four parks do you want to go to in a weekend, right? And you just intersperse it based on sleep times. It's brilliant.
Yeah,
It's the same old life, but it's really good. It's really good. Got to
that's
spend
awesome.
time with family. Super renewing. Super renewing. So, how's the project going so far?
It's going really well.
Yeah.
We have like over 300 registrants, so we'll see if that actually
Nice.
produces into 300 entries. But that's
Mhm.
way up from last year. I think we were at about 200
Correct.
registrants
Yeah. Yeah.
last year, and a lot of cool art coming out right now. I think a lot of people are kind of in the finishing phases now, so there's not too much finished work that's been shown yet. But I know a
Nice.
lot of people are kind of wrapping things up.
What I really love between now and kind of when you kick this off is everyone's shifted their mentality. It's become project. And
Yep.
it's so awesome to having, especially the guys that keep doing it at the same time. You know, there's like a handful of maybe six guys that are consistently, nope, are we okay to swear on this, by the way?
Yeah, of course. Yes, please.
Yeah, sweet. So they're just like, fuck that. And they just double down. Every year they're doubling down and the project's getting bigger and more ambitious. It's awesome to see. I love it,
Yeah,
especially as someone
thanks.
who's almost like what's the word? A backstage hobbyer at the moment, right? More than a front stage hobby. It's just really awesome. I've transitioned entirely into lurking, and it's incredible. But it's
That's
really
yeah. I mean,
awesome to
that's what
watch.
it's there for, right? It's there for you to experience whether you participate or not. Like, I guess I should say for how you can participate, right? So if you're just kind
Yeah,
of an audience member, a viewer, like that's your participation level. So I'm glad that it still keeps, it's still inspiring to you and um, keeps a
for
little bit of
sure,
that flame lit. So for when you get back to hobbying,
dude. Well, I mean, hobbying evolved. This is the catch 22. They say when you find your purpose and your meaning and all this kind of stuff. And then I kind of stumbled into this role, and it's kind of my sense of meaning. And I don't have a huge need to escape to hobbying anymore because I don't loathe
nice.
my workday, right? So I
Yeah,
kind of now I use it purely for renewal and enjoyment and creativity. So I'm way deep. You can't see off to the stage. I have this huge pile of Star Wars minis, and down over this side is Marvel miniatures, and there's like a 10 dioramas and projects sitting on the shelves behind me because I kind of just got stuck back down the miniature rabbit hole. But it is what it is.
awesome. I mean, it's still just kind of. So is it something that like then you just kind of want to do in your free time and or when you get a
Yeah,
chance or
yeah. It's purely like now I've built a business in which I take Mondays off, so I have a 3-day weekend. Right, the family
nice.
disappears back to the workday and daycare and stuff, and I tend to take Monday for myself. It's a kind of a day of renewal and balance because I tend to go quote unquote full retard on the other 4 days because I got to keep my type A under control. So I take Monday to recharge, and I usually just sit down and do some mini work, do some painting, play some games. It's really hardcore.
Nice.
It's a hardcore
That's cool.
life.
And you've this is what is this your second or third year that you've kind of transitioned into this role or
Second,
found this
second.
calling, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, I took about a good, I want to say 9 months to double down on official schooling in the practice itself, but it is something that I've been doing on and off for about 20 years. So coaching, especially in the mindset game, has been a big part of my own journey. And as you know, I'm no stranger to therapy, right? So I've spent about
Yeah.
300K on therapy, and I figured, well, coaching in the mindset space is a great overlap between what I've learned in my own personal growth as well as some stuff that delivers rapid and impactful change in service. So it's hugely meaningful and hugely returning, which is amazing. Amazing.
That's fantastic. That's great to hear. How have you been just kind of finding yourself really busy with clientele still and stuff like that, especially like post COVID? And because I feel like
Yeah,
there's a
man.
lot of just people struggling in general, whether it's direction, purpose, general anxieties, things like that. Like I feel like there's a lot of opportunities to seek some guidance from somebody such as yourself, or, like you say, you've worked with therapists
There
for so
is.
long and things like that. So
Yeah, there is. Look, it's steadily growing, my client base. I tend to do what's called high ticket coaching, which is I tend to work with a specific niche of people that are after a very high level of performance or a very high level of evolution and self growth. Unfortunately, I've decided to make it difficult on myself, and I target the people that tend to do it themselves,
yeah.
which means I have to convert them or get them across the idea that it's okay to actually talk to someone about some of this stuff, right? Which is
Yeah.
kind of half of the appeal to me, because that's where I was for an extended period of time, and until I realized not necessarily accepting help, but definitely listening to other perspectives and being conscious that you're a constant work in progress and all these things. That's where the growth is. That's where the exponential change is, and that's where your life seriously turns around and changes, right? So it's fun. It's fun to convert people, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah, I guess in a lot of ways, convert or empower people to kind of do it from a healthier standpoint versus just kind
Yeah,
of
correct.
trying to do it on their own and things like that, like relying on
Completely.
professionals and help and stuff like that. And that's been a big thing I've been advocating this year because I had to really culminate a health team. Like I needed just more than
Nice.
just one person. And I was actually just joking around with somebody the other day because I have a physical therapist that I go to, and part of just kind of regaining some of the mobility and
Mm-hmm.
ability of some of my injuries, aging, and so far. I was also exploring
Fair enough.
running and, being able to utilize one, her ability as a running coach, but two, some of the technology and advancements and understanding that are out there. I mean, completely opened up, insight into things that were I would have never been able to tackle or even recognize if I didn't seek professional help in this capacity. Because there's no way I would have ever known that I land with 5% or 10% more pressure on my left foot while I'm running, and then like how to change that. It's just, or like run efficiency, like how many
Yeah.
BPMs, how long are you touching the ground? Like, so
Gate press,
I
explosion speed. Exactly.
exactly like all of that. And I think that can really extend into coaching, kind of where it's, would you say your general life coaching, or is it career general coach?
No, so I sit in the mindset space, right?
Okay.
Which is, look, life coaching tends to be a very broad and generalized term, and it catches everything from people who are what you would call, I guess, intuitive coaches through to new age and energy based coaches and Reiki practitioners and all these kinds of
Mm-hmm.
things. I sit in the no bullshit self development space,
Okay.
right?
The
Confronting
tough
truths
love,
about how,
like, yeah.
well, no, oof, yeah, yeah. I mean, yes, like I hate that because there's plenty of people that just want to sit here and yell at people, but
Yeah, for
that's not what
sure.
I do either, right? It's more about going, hey, are you aware that this is the way your brain works? This is how it
Yep.
lands. This is what it's doing to your life, and you're actually doing all of this to yourself. And when people hear these kinds of things in very succinct ways, they go one of two paths, right? They defend, backpedal, and scream and kick and get upset, or they go, holy shit, and their life changes, and their
Yeah.
life changes virtually immediately, right? So my goal is about awareness, understanding what your drivers are and why they work that way, understanding where where your habit structures and your behavior structures are working toxically towards you or against you, where your biases and beliefs are impacting what you actually think and how you interact. And in some cases, high performance executive coaching, in some cases, entrepreneurial and founder coaching, and startup and team coaching, right? So I have an interesting niche in that I tend to work with a lot of power players in either high corporate or startups and small business. And it's good
Interesting.
because I find there's a strong correlation. There's heavy elements of martyrdom. There's heavy elements of self-sufficiency and worth, all these kinds of things.
Yep.
And they all come back to the same stuff, right? Which is our brain has been engineered to tell us lies our entire lives, and we've just chosen to believe them.
And we've developed unconscious or conscious patterns too through that. And those are all
100%.
things that we need to be aware of and how they benefit or negatively impact us.
Agreed. And the worst part is it's self-perpetuating.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So it's a
100%.
self-evolution, it's self-perpetuating. A greatest example I used with someone the other day who I got on a client call, and he said, hey, look, I hear you, I get the idea of limiting beliefs. He used a lot of air quotes, limiting beliefs. And he's like, I don't think I do. I don't have any. I got nothing. There's no limitations. And I'm like, oh, okay, great. Yeah. And he's like, yeah, I'm completely self-made. I figured it all out myself. I'm like, okay, how do you roll your socks? And he's like, oh, well, describe the process. And I'm like, cool. How does your dad roll his socks? And he did a certain action. And he goes, how does your mum roll her socks? Rolls them this way. And I'm like, so you liked your mum more than your dad because you're modeling her behavior. It was exactly identical to what his mother was doing. He's like, fuck. Right. So it is down to things that simple. It is. And that's actually what I'd love to discuss today. If we want to play in that space, it's about internal self-narrative. So I've done a lot of work recently with people around the concept of affirmations, right? Things like gratitude practices, confirmations, affirmations, because I sit in the science context of that. I sit in the neuroscience space versus the, no disrespect to anyone who sits in that space, but the woo-woo manifestation place, right? There's a lot of people out there.
Positive out is positive in kind of thing. Like there's no control over it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I call it toxic positivity, right? Because people are just out here hoping for the best. And it's nowhere near that simplistic. When you understand the science behind it, when you understand the implication behind it and the way our brain actually works, it makes complete sense. It's an obvious transaction. And when people grasp that, they tend to affect far more change far faster. So I'd love to go through that.
Yeah, please do. The stage is yours.
Awesome. Where to begin? I didn't bring props this time. I didn't bring a whiteboard. I knew I'd be too busy sketching stuff this time. So I'll just talk to it and egregiously wave my hands erratically. So
perfect.
Essentially the way your brain works, right? And this is the bread and butter of what I deal with, is it works on a narrative, right? And I'm going to do this in very broad artistic strokes because I want the correlation or the analogy between what we do as artists and what we do as people. Right? Our job when we create a diorama or a project is to create a backing narrative, right? No one just grabs, let's say, a Gundam, chucks on something and goes, there's a tank, woohoo, it's a diorama.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
there's some level of narrative.
They do, but it never pans out well, right?
Yes, exactly.
It comes to life when there's a narrative.
Yep.
And we are the same. Now, the interesting part is we have both a conscious and a subconscious narrative. Our prefrontal cortex, or the front part of our brain that handles logic and rationale, is where we tend to fill it with stories that we've encountered, that we've made up, that we have manufactured in our life experience or our beliefs. But our less conscious brain, or our dormant, our lizard and mammalian brains, they are filled with stories that are put there by someone else. And these are where a lot of the core and limiting beliefs come from. This is why that guy had to roll his socks a certain way, because that's the right way to do it.
Yep.
Right? And in his head, he didn't see that there was a limiting belief there. And that's the trap. Because our narrative is so unique to us that this is the world. Yeah. This is the way we see things. This is the lens we filter through. It's all the levels of judgment and rationale and bias that we filter every communication and event through before it actually lands in the back of our head as any kind of cognitive experience. And it's really messed up, right? This is where you get some obvious stuff like racism. When you're raised around racism, you have a lens of racism. Therefore, everything is looking for racism.
Well, right? And post-truth speaks directly to narratives that aren't founded in any sort of like rational situation or realistic situation.
And we defend it. We have no rationale behind defending some of the shit. It's just simply fundamental to our being. And what we're defending is the core being shaken, right? Yep. Well, it always
enter cognitive dissonance. Yeah,
exactly. If I think this, then everything else I think is insert line, right?
Yes,
and the cognitive dissonance skyrockets because suddenly you're like, well, shit, all of my bedrock is wrong. I can't have all my bedrock rocked. I'm too scared of that outcome. So I'm just going to defend this really shitty and salient point to the death. Because then I feel comfortable that what I thought was reality is definitely reality. It's not the objective
reinforcing
truth,
that narrative. Yeah.
Correct. So the narrative is a fun game. And we have all kinds of different feeders for narrative. We have all kinds of different avenues and placements. We have our own habits, we have our own behaviors. And what most people don't realize is that thoughts are habits and behavior stacks just as much as physical behaviors. We tend to think, okay, smoking is a habit or a behavior. We tend to think overeating is a habit or behavior. Brushing your teeth is a habit and behavior. Reacting a certain way to a certain series of stimulus or media or shows or people is a behavior. And these are all conditioned responses. And those conditioned responses, if successful and end in a reward, act as a positive influence to that narrative, right? So your brain's always looking to seek and prove your hypothesis, irrespective of how healthy it is. So if I have a hypothesis of every time I talk on this podcast, no one ever talks to me and it's a waste of my time, right? Great. Then I'm going to subconsciously or less consciously influence the quality of this engagement so that I manufacture people not actually wanting to engage with me, right? I just look like an asshole because I'm already disengaged. I'm shut off. Fuck, why would I do this? My body language sucks, all these kinds of things, which proves our hypothesis and makes us feel all warm and fuzzy. I was right. And we play this at a meta level and a macro level and a micro level and a maxi level, right? We play it in our whole lives. We seek to self-fulfill these hypotheses and prophecies. And narrative is a huge one to manipulate, because when you're aware of how the narrative got there and you're aware of how and why it impacts your life, and you choose to recondition or change that, fundamental parts of your brain unlock, fundamental parts of your psyche unlock, because it's like being in a large house, a huge house, but half the lights are off and you've never been in the rooms. And until you change the narrative, i.e. the path you walk through the house and turn the lights on, you can never experience those ways of thinking or those ways of being or those behavior sets or those sets of rationale, because they've just been chucked somewhere in a shitty room in the back of the house and you're not even worried about it. Because why would you? Why would you, right? It's just
it doesn't serve you.
Confrontation. Exactly. It doesn't serve you. It forces you into discomfort. It forces you into fear, anxiety, all these kinds of great things that we tend to run from. And until we start confronting those and understanding why and how they exist, we can never really tap into those as a method to become better performers, more well-rounded people, more open-minded, all these kinds of great things that we want to chase. And it brings me to affirmations and confirmations and an ongoing rhetoric I have with a lot of people, because as I said, I tend to play with executives. And I don't know if you're familiar with a lot of executives, but they don't like the idea of affirmations. They don't like the idea of power words into mirrors and all this kind of sensationalized media bullshit version of doing it, right? Because quite frankly, it's nonsense. I can't just sit in front of a mirror and be like, I'm going to get $4 million tomorrow.
Yeah.
But if I say it enough times, it's going to land in my bank account. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yep.
But the manifestation crowd would have you believe it does. Right?
100%.
And this is the disconnect. Now, what actually happens is our brain is like neuroplasticity, and I'm jumping over a bit. Neuroplasticity is the element of brain pathways and neural pathways changing, right? They change, adapt, and repivot. They refire in different ways based on repetition. It's just like going to the gym. We do a rep. We do it once. We're not going to get a huge muscle. We do it 1,000 times. We're going to get a pretty decent sized muscle, right? Neuroplasticity and the concept of repetition fundamentally rewrites how your brain works. Just like doing reps in the gym, but for your thoughts. So the concept of affirmations or confirmations, whichever interchangeable synonym you choose, is to give your brain an alternative narrative. So people think it's just a way to make you feel good. It's not. All you're doing is presenting another hypothetical, presenting another alternative that is counter to what the current is. And the reason we do that is because otherwise your brain doesn't hear, it doesn't reaffirm, it doesn't consider this as a pathway. It's a room that's had the light off the whole time.
Yep.
If I simplify it and put it back in the same analogy, we can go through life walking down the hallway and only going to the room on the right. This time you're walking down, you're going, what's on the left? What's on the left? What's on the left? So every time you walk past, you flick the light on the left. You go, oh, look, there's a whole new room I didn't know about. Right? So neurologically, it's about reaffirming and building new pathways. It's about changing our physical behavior, our mental behavior, and our habits and behaviors to support the hypothesis and the affirmation or the confirmation.
Yes, 100%.
And where people go tragically wrong is they never structure them. They don't understand how to. Sorry, my monitor just keeps flipping off and making me go into silent darkness. People don't realize how they should structure it. right?
Yeah.
Especially when I work with people in the space of anxiety, right? I work with people in the space of public speaking. I work with people in the space of having to present in what's called C-suite meetings or board meetings or executive reviews, those kinds of things. And they usually sit in a middle management or an upper middle management level. And when they step into these rooms, it's filled with all these, I use the term loosely, confident people, right? So it's very threatening.
Yep.
It's a very threatening environment. Suddenly you're under scrutiny of all of your peers and your seniors, and they panic. They go into straight panic.
Yeah.
And there's the conventional, oh, okay, imagine them naked or any of these kind of nonsense things. Another one I thought was really good was imagine them all as puppies. That one is fucking brilliant. If you're ever struggling in a room full of people you have to present to, imagine everyone as puppies and your mood will immediately skyrocket. But the naked thing is terrifying. It's just cliche. The puppy thing
Yes.
is fire. Believe me. It's
Puppy
fun.
thing sounds much better.
It's so good. It's so good. Even before this, I'm talking to a bunch of puppies. It's fun.
Yeah.
So I do it before a lot of podcasts. It's great. Now, what I do with them is we instead create a story where, and I say create a story, it's creating a narrative, it's manufacturing an alternative, it's challenging the status. When they go into that environment or that setting, they believe they're being judged. They believe they're being scrutinized and their worth is on the line. And anxiety, make no mistake, anxiety is a byproduct. We always experience anxiety. I've had debilitating anxiety multiple times in my life. We've discussed this at length in multiple stages in our relationship. Anxiety and depression has been a big part of my life, but it's always a byproduct. It's always a byproduct of thinking or entrenched thought. And in that case, the anxiety is very situational and it's very, very isolated because their worth is on the line. They believe the judgment is going to somehow compromise their value or their perception of worth, right? So what we do in an affirmation space or a confirmation space is simply, I'm fine. Yeah. There is no judgment in this space. There is a complete sense of worth, but we do that through being specific. I know my content sells, my content has been backed up by XYZ sources. It's all about reaffirming the delivery of the thing and removing it from the ownership of the individual.
Yes.
So the first trick with affirmations and confirmations is specificity.
Yep.
Everyone does this. I want to be rich. Okay, fucking cool. Even the manifestation team is like, no, you have to tell Dharma exactly what you want. It's specificity, right? Sorry, my bias is slipping in there a little bit. but it is specificity, right? It's about going.
It requires steps.
You can't derive steps unless you have specificity.
Right. But that's what I was kind of getting to is you have to line these things up. You have to look at the steps or the specificity that requires me to get rich. How does that happen? It doesn't fall out of a tree. Like exactly. I have to take the necessary. Yep. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, let's use me as an example, right? I'm not really chasing rich. I do this through service, but I make good money. Brilliant. Yeah. But if I was chasing rich and I was using affirmations in that space, I would use it like, I want my coaching practice to source 30 new clients in the next 6 months, right? It is a gateway to get to an outcome. But my specificity comes from the path. Or I go, hey, I would like my coaching business to be representative in this industry, right? I want to be a thought leader in these spaces, knowing that the richness will come as a byproduct of that kind of action. So the specificity comes from determining or predetermining or understanding a path and adding that kind of affirmation, right? Because then what's going to happen is my brain goes, oh, that's actually what you want. You actually want to be a thought leader in that space. Well, let's be more creative. How do I become a thought leader? Well, I need to be more open to discomfort. I need to be more outspoken. I need to speak on more engagements. So when opportunities come up, my brain goes, hold up, you wanted to be a thought leader. You need to be on more podcasts. So don't let your anxiety win. Tell it to shut the fuck up and get on the camera.
Yeah.
Right.
Which makes it a lot simpler than being like,
correct.
Yeah, it makes it a lot simpler than being like, oh, I gotta go do this podcast so that people know who I am. And again, it's how you're framing it. It's how you're setting up the narrative based on the specificities that can ultimately be down to your strengths, your abilities, your techniques, your connections, your time, your money, your energy, all of those things.
100%. And the real disconnect between what people think and look, I blame this not on the manifestation crowd, but I blame it on the term itself, manifestation.
Yes.
Because when you do something like affirmations or confirmations or even a gratitude practice, right? We've discussed gratitude practices briefly before. It's got nothing to do with manufacturing fantasy.
Yeah.
At all. You don't create anything.
Yeah.
What you do is you condition your brain to aim in a certain direction, or to reduce fear in a certain direction, or to encourage discomfort or comfort in certain directions.
Yep.
What you're doing is the reps in the gym to encourage your brain to think in a different way. And that's all it is. And when you do that, you naturally gravitate towards that thing because you have less resistance to doing it. Right?
100%.
It's one of the greatest examples is Jim Carrey, right? I think when he was living in a car with his family, God, I kind of remember in the early 90s, he quite frequently cites, I had a check where I made out to myself for acting services rendered for $10 million. And then, and I think he post-dated it by 1995 or something like that. And then he had it in his wallet, and every day he would look at it. Every single day he would look at it. I'm going to act. I'm going to grow. I'm going to chase acting. I'm going to go for bigger and bigger stuff. And he landed Dumber and Dumber and got a $10 million net worth by the time 1995 rolled around. Yeah. But it had nothing to do with writing a check and being very positive and hoping it would show up. It had to do with the fact that he was on more shows, more movies, more content, more acting classes than anyone else during that time. And he worked his ass off.
Yeah, I mean, I would even say that the wellness epidemic or the wellness fad that takes place is very similar to this. Like, you can achieve wellness, and you're like, well, yeah, but you need to achieve it through very specific things and trajectories and changing your patterns and changing your narratives and things like that. Like, we've talked about my health issues, and it's just kind of yo-yos. And so I have to remind myself that, I will get better. But to do that also requires me seeking out professionals, seeking out changing my habits, changing what time, I eat at, changing my workouts, like understanding my workouts better and how they serve me or how they don't. And just all of these things. Therapists, like it's not just one thing. I can't just wish for wellness kind of thing. Wellness is an actionable thing that you actually
have you tried doing it with a sunrise in the background? Apparently that helps.
Live, laugh, love, right?
Yeah, exactly. Look, and every single level of every single part of what you just described involved serious confrontation in the mindset space. 100%. Because you had to confront your own beliefs, your own biases, and your own prejudices to go, well, is this doable? Is this workable? Do I want to do it? How do I want to do it? When can I do it? Now I need the physical action that follows up.
Yep.
And all of that only stimulates by the fact that you go, fuck, I have a very real need and I need to get this shit done. So I either just mind vice my way through it, or I convince my brain to get on board.
Yeah.
And the second part of that affirmations or confirmations is that people want to do it cerebrally. They say, oh, I said it 1,000 times and nothing happened. Yep, because you didn't give a fuck. Right? You have
nothing happened past that. You said it and you just didn't give a fuck past that. You're like,
well, that's it, right? I mean, you describe it before. You hit it in one, really, with the fact that you have to take action. Meaningful action has to happen. You're reducing barriers, but action has to happen. I described affirmations like steroids, right? If we're going to keep using the gym analogy, I'm leaning on the gym analogy today, apparently. Who knew? So affirmations are like steroids, in that you can take a steroid, but if you go and sit on the couch and watch Netflix for 9 hours a day, you're not going to get jacked. Steroids are only useful if you're going to go and work twice as hard as everyone else, right?
Yep.
It's the recovery within the steroid cycle that makes you, which is altered by the steroid, not the work effort.
Yeah.
And affirmations are the same. You actually have to have tangible action driven off of that in some positive direction or intention, right? Which comes back to your whole North Star guiding purpose, meaning in these more loftier terms and goals and directives. But the secret sauce to affirmations is actually emotion. And a lot of people don't bring emotion to this. And this is where the overlap and the fun starts for a lot of us who are artists and creatives, right? We have people in the creative space. I know that there's a bunch of people in the Cerulean project that are in corporate life. They're in every walk of it. But because we engage in an artistic hobby, we understand the nuance of creativity and narrative. And this is where affirmations get fun, because they become an extension of visualization. So every time we build a diorama or a piece, or we even just get a new bot to build, right? You just get a new Gunpla kit, you build it up, and you're like, I'm going to custom paint this. And in your head, you're like playing with color combinations, you're playing with details, you're playing with aftermarket modding, scribing, all these kinds of great things, because you're building this picture in your mind, this visualization.
Yep.
And what we do as artists and hobbyists is we simply do our very best to create the picture in our head in a physical context.
Yep.
And the only people that ever really get anywhere are the ones that narrow that difference, right? The closer it is in my head to what I see out here, the better it is. And we go through chasing this ongoing pursuit of tools, techniques, skill sets, expansion, experience, all these kinds of things to refine those skills to translate what's in our head. But these things apply to our lives as well.
100%.
So when we create a narrative or an affirmation or a confirmation, and this is a lot of what I do with people when we do it, we try and actually visualize what that looks like, right? So a good one for me that I used quite early on, because I was quite a salty cuck for a good portion of my life, right? I was in a very negative space. It's great. Who else comes on shit and says they were a salty cuck? But I was very negative. I was very anti. I was very confrontational. I had to prove my worth and claw my value out of everyone at everyone's expense, all this kind of shit, right? You know, the same kind of tropish existence that a lot of people live. And one for me was simply, I want to be happy.
Yeah.
Which is perfectly vague. Right? I could sit in front of a mirror and say, hey, I want to be happy. And what I realized was, well, I don't want to be happy. What I want to be, when I really analyzed it, was energetic and kind. And I figured if I had high energy and I was mostly kind, I would be a lot less incentivized to be a dick.
Yeah.
So then I created two scenarios in my head. The first one is a visualization of me walking downtown or going and doing the shopping or meeting some random passers-by and smiling and engaging with them and being cordial and then being cordial back to me. That simple, right? Then I lean into that visualization, into that narrative, and I think, man, how would I feel in that instance? Let's say a random person walked past me and they smiled and just said I should have a great day or shook my hand or did something nice. Well, I'd feel fucking amazing.
Right.
So then that visualization now has an accompanying emotion and feeling to it. So now when I institute my affirmations, I'm sitting there going, okay, I want to be kind and energetic. I am a kind and energetic person. And in my head, what's playing is a show reel of me being kind while being really energetic.
Yeah.
And I actually I had a secondary level with the energy thing where I'm just like, it's like Goku-esque levels of lightning coursing through my body for like an energy juice, right? And now, like, even now, my shoulders are starting to hunch up when I say it, because my brain goes lightning in the spine every time I try and recall this, because I've done it so many times, right? But I tried to implicitly connect those two. So I'd always say I'm excited, or I'm kind and I'm energetic, right? I try to keep that intention of the passion and the kindness at the same spot. And now they're synonymous for me. When I'm kind to people, I feel happier and more energetic. When I'm happier and energetic, I feel like being more kind to people. I've created that connection in my head and rewrote those neural pathways. So in practice, now when I'm confronted with the option of being kind or being a dick, I go, well, I kind of like being energetic and happy, so I'm going to be kind to that person, and vice versa.
Instead of being a dick to them where they may or may not deserve it, kind of thing, because it's triggered that sort of response from you, which again, we're talking about an old narrative that was written where it's like, well, if I'm a dick to this person, they'll leave me alone. It'll be safer. I'll assert power or whatever it is, however the narrative is spun it. But you have this choice. I think something that was interesting to bring up or highlight is you talked about this energy like Goku, right? And for me, I think in a lot of ways, trying to achieve these things, like for somebody to sit there and be like, well, I want to be nice and energetic kind of thing, or kind and energetic. What does energetic look like? And I think it's important to say that you can look at things that resonate with you, that you would say, that's energetic. That's energy. That's the energy that I want to have. Because it could be something like an anime. It could be something like an experience or a story that's told. And you're like, that sounds like something that I could really create an image of in my head. Because again, that's going to reinforce that narrative and the specificity. I guess
specificity. It's a hard
specificity. It reinforces those, and it allows it to create this picture, a more rich picture in your head, which is essentially a plan to follow, something that can reinforce.
Correct. There was actually a really great series of studies, and I can't remember who did these first. I think they came out of Harvard and then some out of Stanford. But essentially what they did was they took a series of, have you heard about the piano player test for imagination or visualization
No.
versus concurrent? Amazing series of studies. So
Please explain,
essentially,
yeah.
I'm going to brutalize it. Just let me paraphrase. But but essentially they took two groups of people and tried to teach them classical piano, right?
Okay.
Now they had audience A go and learn the piano and do the lessons every single day in the exact same way. They had group B or audience B do a lesson and then go to a series of lengthier visualizations every single day. And what they did through magnetic recognition or essentially checking brain activity is they noticed that the groups of neural fibers in the groups of the brain or areas of the brain that lit up were the same. And they did this to prove categorically that our brain can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
Right? So when we are creating an imaginary scenario, we're actually telling our brain, this is something I'm going through. It's a thing. When we add emotion to that, it believes it more. It becomes more real. It becomes more savage. It becomes more impactful to us because our emotional center is engaged and some of the gut bacteria is engaged, but a separate thing. I digress that I'm researching. It's awesome work, by the way. If you look at the
it's
ENS.
pretty amazing. Yeah.
It's, dude, so cool. Anyway, I don't want to nerd out on that right now. But we're engaging our emotional centers, our central nervous system, our feeling centers, all of the areas of the brain. So it feels like it's more real to our brain if we have an emotional validation in there. Now, what really fucks people up is we go through that and everyone can go, yeah, that sounds like it makes sense. You add emotion, our brain doesn't really recognize its imagination and it all connects the dots and then goes, great, it's a lived experience. But we do that positively and negatively all the time.
100%.
And a key takeaway for a lot of people on this call is if you have a shitty day at work, what do? You go home and ruminate. You catastrophize. You stay up late cycling. Oh man, that guy was an asshole. Oh, this chick was such a bitch. I was doing
playing
this
it on repeat
over and over and over, getting shittier and more tired and more angry and shittier and more tired and more angry. And then we eventually go to sleep. And what happens is our brain is sat there going, okay, so we're going to dwell on this shit for the next 6 to 8 hours. Gotcha. Sweet. That's going to happen a lot to you in the next 6 to 8 hours. And then we wake up and we go, I'm tired. Yeah, because you've been having asshole fights the whole night with a metaphysical reality, right?
Yep.
So we do this all the time. We create this self-perpetuated toxic narrative without even being aware. So if you use that for good, let's say light side instead of evil, it's about reaffirming and reconditioning and putting that in place and adding a lot of that emotion. And what you said before about using anime, media, anything, it adds that significance because you have a deeper tie to it. You have a more emotional resonance to it, which is just a nice way of saying you're more connected to that. Like no one can not hear Goku scream and get tingles and go like this. There's no man close to 40 that doesn't go like this when he hears Goku scream and start powering up. It just doesn't happen. It's physically conditioned at the core of our being. So I was like, that's what I'm going to channel. I'm actually doing one right now. A lot of my affirmation cycle now is about, as you said before, I'm getting older, you're getting older, we're all getting older, right? You hit 40 and stuff gets hard, right? It legit gets hard. So I'm like, you know what I want to do?
The healing factor decreases. Yep.
Bro, Wolverine dies. So I'm out here every morning doing affirmations like, I want to move like John Wick.
Yep.
Because Keanu is old, but he moves well.
He's in his 50s.
Right.
Yep.
Right. And I don't know if you know, but his magazine change is actually part of Competition Magazine changing now. But it's crazy stuff. But he moves really well. So I use that narrative because I'm a huge narrative and media driven nerd. It doesn't matter whether I serve clientele that are in the six figures or not. I am a nerd. So for me, nerd references land when I create a visual representation in my head. So I create narratives
resonates with you. Yep.
Correct. Because I go all in on that kind of medium, right?
Yep.
But that could be anything. It could be a childhood story. It could be just you making up some shit in your head. But they are hugely powerful in that space. For me, it was a big part of my journey through anxiety and depression in the first place. And it wasn't because I was out here going, go away anxiety. It was out here because I was like, well, where am I experiencing anxiety? Where am I experiencing depression? Where am I experiencing disconnect? Where am I experiencing a lack of connection with people around me? Knowing that those were the counters to me feeling that way, feeling isolated, feeling lonely. So what I did was I conditioned myself to be more open, to be more connection seeking, to be less protective, to confront my own comfort zone a lot more. And the more I did that, the more I stepped into that space, the more I counterbalanced the triggers of the anxiety and depression for me. And this is where things ebb and flow between, say, mindset coaching and mental health, because a lot of these tools and techniques like finding meaning, finding purpose, finding direction, understanding your drivers, understanding what makes you feel that way, it's self-introspection, it's self-growth. But the byproduct of not doing it are these mental health knock-on effects, right?
100%.
Like every time you know you're going to get to a really bad place, the first thing you do is you go out of society.
Yep.
Right? Because you've taken the internal time to understand that, and you know that changing your scenario or changing your experience, lived experience and location is going to jolt you into a different place where you can visualize and exist in a better way. And that has a natural counterbalance.
Yep. Yeah, because I'm able to visualize that even when I'm not there. Because I'm like, this is what I identify with. This is what resonates with me. This is where I feel a sense of peace and a sense of power and a sense of self-worth in a lot of ways, because it's just something that has resonated with me in the past. It could be argued that it could be romanticized in this kind of more like adventure-esque, again, watching Indiana Jones kind of thing and having this adventure. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's a great point to like make where just having those things where you can recognize it right away. Like, this is how I'm feeling. This is what's beginning to happen and set in. Because some of these things are outside of our control. People are outside of our control. Our environments are outside of our control for the most part. You work in an office, you've got a lot of variables that you have to deal with that can really impact your day from a negative. So you have to decide what you are in control of. It's the same if I'm at home and I can't do it. I'll go and pick up my Muse for 20 minutes and I'll do a guided meditation through it where I'm practicing biofeedback, recognizing how fast my heart's beating, how active my mind is, and being able to recognize that in real time and confront it in real time as, hey, stop thinking, go back to your breath, go back to your breath work, because then that extends out and it becomes an unconscious behavior, becomes an unconscious narrative, an unconscious pattern that serves me in a better way than the anxiety or the depression or the anger will.
And again, it comes back to repetition. Right? The more you stack that good column of this is the way I react when I feel X, then you start doing less of this is the way I plummet when I do X.
Yep.
Right? So your early warning signs now trigger a positive set of behaviors and you seek to replace that. That's beautiful. Yep. Makes total sense. And you touched on breath work as well, which is an amazing one for that, because it literally gives you the zero fucks in breath work, right? If you don't keep up, you're done. So
you're done. Yeah, you really are.
You don't have time to dwell. You're just focusing on the doing so much that it pulls you out of the bullshit.
Yep, I love it. Pulls you right out. And it's so simple. And I think that a lot of people don't. I think with a lot of these things, it either seems so simple, it's cliche, right? Like that doesn't work. And you're like, but it does. Or it seems so complex that you could never surmount it. Like it's never something that you could achieve. And you're like, yeah, but so you have to, again, understand the specificity that's required to achieve a small or large goal. And again, how does it serve you? What is your intent with it? What are you trying to achieve with this? And, you talk about purpose and meaningful, and me as someone, I feel so lost in life because what I thought was me, what I saw as me as this designer owning agency, and this was just going to be me until, I've retired. That's not it. That's not me. So now I'm lost. And that's a larger question to tackle. And in some ways I have, but I've also rolled back the narrative in size to smaller, more obtainable pieces that I can deal with. My health, my mental health, like my physical health, some of my hobbies, things like that. So then I can start to practice a bit of what you're talking about in a smaller capacity. Because I think for some people, it could be like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. It feels like I just have to completely uproot my life. Whereas it could be as simple as hitting a better golf shot.
Dude,
how is that going to happen? I visualize it. I have that emotional response of excitement and self-worth, but I have to go do repetitions. I probably should go and talk to somebody who can look at it and see if there's any sort of adjustments that I can make and give me better guidance in that. So then when I go back to my repetitions, I'm applying more higher level or a more educated approach to this.
Correct, because it's an evolution, right?
Exactly.
Again, neuroplasticity can continually change, and that's perfectly okay. It's perfectly
Yep.
okay to be wrong the first 1,000 times you did it, and right now,
100%.
and then wrong another 6 months from now. You just keep iterating, you just keep turning.
Yep.
I totally. One of the things I work with a lot of people on is I hear this all the time. I have no time for wellness. I have no
Yep.
time for wellness practices. I have no time. Like, it's not a primary part of my coaching to do wellness, but I roll in things like breath work. I roll in things like meditative practices because they are mental training exercises, not
Mm-hmm.
because of any woo-woo reason or ritualistic or any spiritual reason. Sometimes that's a thing for people, but for me, they're neural training exercises.
100%.
So
Well, if you
I
look at
do
the
things
wellness
like
wheel, I mean, they even have the occupational slice where it's like
100%.
all around work. It's not going in with, it's not taking crystals to work. It's taking actionable behaviors and patterns and narrative to work.
Correct. Correct. And you, in life, this is one of the biggest things for people. We don't realize how big a leveraged asset we are. We are literally the center. We are everything. We're the center of every wheel. Like, I don't like the wheel of life concept or the wellness wheel and stuff like that,
Yeah,
just
of
because I
course.
find it very skewed towards a style of coaching. But I
Yep.
like to say you're your highest leverage asset, right? And yes, it's hard to do some of this shit. Yes, it's hard to recondition and change some of these things, but it gets easier. The hardest part really is just starting. It really
Mm-hmm.
is. Honestly, getting through the
Yep.
bullshit to start doing something is the hardest thing you can do. And then once you do it, every single time gets easier. When I first tried meditation, for example, just to throw back to the meditation concept, I think I've gone on and off meditation like 6 times over the last decade, right? Because I sucked at it. It was terrible. It was chaos. It was fucked up. I couldn't do it. And I tried it again. And then I went and did training and I did it again. And I went and talked to these guys and I did it again. And then I went to classes and I did it again. And I couldn't crack it. And it wasn't until one day where someone said, it's not actually a thing. There's no thing that
Yeah.
is
There's
meditation. It's
no,
the action of
yeah.
trying to do a thing. I went, okay, now, no, yeah, I got it. All right, cool. So, but again, mental training. But
Yep.
just getting going and getting momentum on doing these things, the wellness concept, the meaning concept, all this kind of shit is a byproduct of investing and understanding yourself and your self-awareness. You say, okay, you're breaking into micro chunks. Well, what I'm hearing is you're prioritizing you.
Yeah.
So when you talk before, the design agency was me until I die, it sounds like there was iterations of value and identity, and this was my perceived life path, right? And what I'm
100%.
hearing now is you're breaking it down and analyzing, well, what makes me me?
Yeah.
And how do I enjoy some of those components? And ironically, the way you usually get to that long-term vision is by taking the time to understand those components. That is actually, it's not you taking the easy road of getting there. It is literally the path to getting there.
Yeah.
Right? Actually, a client gave me this. When you're in a relationship, we always think, you complete me and all this other bullshit. And it's not the case at all. You have to be a complete you to be half of a relationship, right? It should be 200%, 100% individuals, not you coming in
Yep.
at 30 and they come in at 70 and we just hope that works forever. And that's inevitably a fail, and it will always fail. You have to work on being 100% of you. And just like that analogy, you are a series of components and building blocks. But we always just ignore half the building blocks because these are the ones we're told are good, and these are the ones we're told are bad, and these are the ones we're told we should believe, and these are the ones we're told we shouldn't believe. And until you express and play and do all of that shit and know who you are, you can't figure that out. You
Of
just
course
can't.
not.
Because
Yeah.
you're playing with a stacked deck. You're playing with something that's already shaped by fear. You're playing with something that's already shaped by bias and belief and all this other crap that just sits in your head and gnawing
Society's
at your
shaping
reality.
it. Yeah. Society
100%.
being like, this is how you show your value. And you're like, that's hustling your hobby.
Yeah,
It's not valuable unless you can show that it's a monetary. It's like,
exactly.
it's the worst thing for an artist. Like, let's just let people make art.
Well, I mean, there's two schools to that, right? And I've
Yeah.
actually lately, I used to sit on that space too. And lately I've kind of erred towards the other way because I could arguably talk about this shit all day. This is arguably my hobby and I'm making good money out of it.
Yeah.
But I could continue to do it and I could continue to scale it. Where it goes sideways is when you add unnecessary pressure to that game. I enjoy the doing. The attainment of it is secondary. And
Yep.
where the breakdown, and this is the common trope with artists, right? With artists, with hobbyists, with all these people, they chase the outcome. They don't chase the process. As cliche as it
100%.
sounds.
No, that's true.
And when they chase the outcome, it adds pressure, it adds overhead, it adds judgment, it adds bias. It allows you to hear the external, or cede your authority to external. Internal
Yep.
authority is about going, I'm fucking having a great time.
Yep.
I'm having a great time. I'm doing this, I'm enjoying myself. I'm doing that, I'm enjoying myself. If I'm not enjoying it, sometimes there'll be stuff that sucks because of the business. That's fine. You do that and you move on with the stuff you enjoy. But predominantly, if you enjoy the majority of time, it's a win, right? In the hobby context, I've talked to a couple of people who have, I mean, obviously I've helped a few people start up stores and commission businesses and things like that as well on the side, just because I'm still in the scene. And inevitably it goes one of two ways. People go, oh man, I could get some real money out of this. And they go all in on mass producing low volume stuff or low cost stuff. Or they dial it back and they go high value and just spend more time marketing. Right? But then when it comes to the actual project execution for these two people, these guys are hammering shit out all day, every day. They lose the joy, they lose the passion, they lose the fire. These guys go, every project is a new story. Yep. Every project is a new chance for creativity. It might not be my creativity, but it's my vision of that creativity.
Yeah.
So then I express that and then I sell that as an asset. And it's the same with everything. But we don't do it that way because society has conditioned us to shut the fuck up and sit in a seat for 9 hours, go get your money and fuck off. Right? So there's the whole false pedestal discussion, all these kinds of things, but it very much is about going, where and how can I get what I want or what I'm told I should want? Let's frame it that way, as a byproduct of actions that are digestible and enjoyable for me. Right? If we throw back to your design agency, I actually have a client who just cashed up her design agency and her social media agency because it became too much about the grind. She scaled up to $1 million. They wanted to double it down and then triple into the third year to a $3 million annual revenue. And she's like, I'm done. The creativity's gone. The joy is gone. I'm out. I'm just walking away from this shit, because she lost that touch point and scaled past the point where she could remain immersed in the narrative and the story and the content and the copywriting that she was doing.
Yep.
And this is what ties affirmations back, right? Because you don't start looking for jobs that you love, you start finding love in the jobs that you can do. And if there's jobs you can do that can get an income, because an income is your primary source, then you find a way to double down and enjoy those more. And if you want to scale those to get to a certain point financially, then you start thinking alternative, you start thinking alternatively, you start thinking, sorry, not alternatively. What's the word? Sorry, this is like session number 4 today. That's the word. In some diverse way or alternative way, or not alternative. Oh my God, mental blank. Alternate. Jesus, that was
alternate way.
Alternate way. So an inverse way, right? Maybe I'm thinking too far in this path, but I actually have to do the inverse, right? Directly confrontational almost in thinking. There's all kinds of ways to cut that, but it all comes back to you being open to the experience of trying it, being open to the experience of engaging in it, and being willing to challenge that comfort zone and conditioning your brain to do so.
Yep.
And it's mind-bogglingly easy while sounding too easy to be real.
Yeah.
It's actually insane.
Yeah. Well, I mean, because I think in some ways people could argue that it sounds vague, right?
Completely.
So it's like, how do I achieve something that you've described 5% of? And you're like, well, I haven't described 5% of it. I've described 95% of it. Like, you need to just fill in the rest. Like, it's something that, like, again, it's just getting started.
I would throw in that there is a very core element of the manifestation practices that is relevant here, and it really helps with a lot of people. Some don't, that's fine. But the core element is this: when you manifest affirmation, some kind of repeated confirmation to counter your own programming or create a new narrative, it's about putting it out there, being specific, adding emotion, getting attached. But the manifestation element is this: do not be attached to how you get there.
Yeah.
It's about going for a path, but not being pedantic about the steps, right? I don't know how your partner is. My wife is amazing. She's incredible. And I do a lot around the house. but it's very important sometimes that I do a lot around the house in the exact way that she wants it done. And that is so counterproductive to actually getting it done that I just don't want to do it at all. So sometimes it's just about letting the fuck go and being open to what comes up. Because honestly, if you could define exactly, let's say I'm here now and I'm only earning, say, 50K or 60K a year, and I want $1 million a year by XYZ time in the future. If I could articulate every exact point of that to a certain degree of how much it should be done, then I would have just gone and fucking done it, and I'd be making $1 million already. So you are not fundamentally equipped to add that level of specificity to something like a future visualization or affirmation or guidepost or reconditioning of your brain, because you don't fucking know yet.
Yeah.
You simply don't know, otherwise you would have. So then it's important to go, this is where I'm going, brain, figure it the fuck out. But figure it out as we go, and I'm not going to get super pedantic about how that happens. Because that's where you find new technology, you find new tools, you find new people, you find new communities, and they all encourage that. You step towards that direction. So
they all benefit in the journey that you can't foresee for the most part. Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Otherwise it would be past already. You would have already had that $1 million.
Yeah, it'd be past. Like I can do this. I've seen the future. I know every step that I'm supposed to do. Like
yeah, if you had to control it and be in control of every step, then you would have already smashed it a dozen times, and you'd have a different series of affirmations. And you'd be like, maybe I make $10 million a year and I just really want to enjoy doing nothing on a couch, but how do I do that?
Yeah.
Because that person's a grinder and they've got XYZ, right? So to that point of it seems kind of vague. Yes, it's deliberately vague because you're meant to be in going through the process. The act of finding out how to do it is how you do it. And that's just life.
Yeah, it really is. And on all levels, whether it's career, whether it's relationships, whether it's art, whether it's just on all different. Yeah. I mean, it's the beauty of it. And in a lot of ways, it can also be the frustration of it, because I think we've gotten so conditioned too to having instructions for everything. The roadmap,
or being
we're
right
told too, or being right. Yeah. Being right. Having by 30, you're going to be married. By 35, you'll have a kid. By 40, you're going to own a home. Like all of these things that are just told to you. So you're just like, okay, that's my path versus just finding it and be like, I do want to own a home one day. How does that happen? What are the steps that need to get there? What type of home is it? Like, where do I see myself? Like, I think that vision boards are kind of silly, but I also think that they're great in helping shape that narrative.
Well, they're a mind map, right?
Yeah, exactly.
They're just a mind map for visualization. Even owning a home, for example, I did a lot of work in this space myself because I've been homeless twice, right? I now own, 3, technically 2.5 homes, because banks. 2.5 homes. We have rental income from some. I have a series of investments. I have my own business, and my wife's working full time. But I didn't get there from going, okay, I just hope it will pan out, right? I got there from going, okay, this is where I want to go. How do I want to get there? I want to see myself doing this. Know that I am worth having that. Know that I can do that. Because every time you imagine it, you're putting a tick in the confidence column, right? I can do this. I can own this. I can be this person. I can be happy. I can be happy and not working lots and have a great family and have lots of money. It's totally doable. So your brain goes, oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So all that time you were told you're a piece of shit as a kid, we're going to ignore that. All right, we're going to do this thing now. Okay, how do we do that? So now when you're on YouTube, something pops up and goes, well, this is how you start saving for a house. Your brain goes, oh, did you see that thing? You should click that thing. Right? So this is the concept of it. It starts seeing those things through via your reticular activating system. It starts firing off and triggering you for information cues. But it's
100%.
Yeah, it's incredible. You're right. It's in every aspect of life. Absolutely every aspect of life. And one thing I really like to do is treat my mindset, my relationship, my parenting, as well as my career as a hobby. Just like I did with Gunpla, just like I do with any other hobby. I go neurotic as fuck about it. Right? You want to learn a new scribing technique? Well, there's 40 hours of YouTube.
Yep.
Right? There's 3 in my instance, there's 3 case studies. There's 5 research papers. There's all these kinds of avenues you can delve into. But what we do is we go, no, my hobby is where I go obsessive and everything else just makes life happen. And we'll just put it on the back burner and hope for the best. And we passively coast through life, not taking ownership and control of those elements.
Yeah, not treating the relationship with your partner like a hobby where you want to invest in it. How do I become a better partner?
100%.
How do I serve my partner better? How do I serve our home better as a collective? Like as an individual, how do I, and like, and yeah, I think that, I think if people want to make big changes in life, sometimes I say start small, start on something that's smaller and more
Always start small.
obtainable, that you can try these different techniques. You can try this different approach. You can try a narrative that isn't feels as risky or isn't potentially as risky, like changing a career, like just dropping everything and trying to change a career can be really risky.
Yeah, but then you shouldn't drop everything and change a career, right? You should understand why you're
Exactly.
going into that career. You should understand things, expose yourself to the actions of that career,
Yep.
make sure it's a fit, all these kinds of things. There's always
Yeah.
a pathway. Someone's
Yep.
done everything you want to do in some way. There's always a path you can find to baby step your way through everything. And even if you did know the exact path, do the baby steps. The baby steps are
Yeah.
always the way of doing it. It doesn't matter how clear or not clear you are, take a step, reevaluate, take a step, reevaluate, because
Yep.
that allows a huge degree of pivot and adaptability to make it work for you, to mitigate risk, to do all these kinds of things that we naturally balk at. One
Yeah.
of the
Because none
greatest,
of this is a straight line. Like none of this is
no,
just one
no,
foot in
fuck
front of
no,
the other. Like, yeah.
no way, no way. It's usually take 3 steps, fall off, go on a different path, take the elevator. That's
Yeah.
it's that erratic, right? But you have to be open
Yep.
to that being a thing, because there's elements of control and fear and risk and security that make us go, no, I have to take every cautious step in this exact line or I'll fall off and die. Probably because at some point someone told you something that landed in your brain, and if I fall off, I'll die and I'm worthless, right? And we've all been there in some way, shape, or form. It doesn't matter how peachy or rosy our life is. We all have some kind of narrow guardrails we're conditioned to think are a thing. And we have
Without
to
a doubt.
really objectively step back and guess those, or second guess those. So it's a crazy topic, man. I love it. It's incredible. But it is all completely, to go back to the exact start of the call, it's all about control.
Yep.
Right? So you can choose to take control of the elements of your life, and you can choose to do the practices and the activities and the elements that actually give you that control of your life, knowing that the only thing you really can control is the way you think. Literally everything else has too many variables for you to take complete control. You can get implied control, but you never have total control.
Without a doubt. Yep. And I think that's where a lot of people might feel overwhelmed or that it's too difficult, because if it's not all in control, then it's all out of control. And it's like, that's not necessarily true.
It's not even
Like,
remotely true.
yeah.
In fact, it's all out of control all the time, and it just kind of works
Yep.
out, right?
Yep.
Like we go on the road every single day with a bunch of people that you probably wouldn't trust to make the right decision when voting, but they have 5 tons worth of 100 or 60 mile an hour, I guess in your country, 60 mile an hour speeding, tons of death flying down the road in opposite directions constantly. And we're just like, yeah, that'll pan out. It'll work
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't, but
Oh,
most of the time it does,
my,
right?
my state, it's 80 miles an hour and a bunch of
Jesus Christ.
like frontage roads are 70 miles an hour. They used to not have a speed limit in this state until like 2004, I think, or something like that. Yeah, you could drive as fast as you wanted.
And you could drive down, you could literally go to every second house and find a thing to disagree with them about on a personal level. But you're just going to, but on the road, you're just like, well, let's just accept it's controlled chaos.
You're controlling what you can and accepting
Correct.
what you can't.
Correct. Which is unfortunately pretty much everything. The issue
Pretty
is a
much
lot of
everything.
people steer towards control being a factor in a very unhealthy level. And unfortunately, a
Oh,
lot of people I talk to, and sorry, go for it.
I was just going to say that hugely inflicted me and my mental health and my physical health was just having, and part of it's a perfectionist issue, trying to be in control of everything and not allowing for any sort of movement to happen in any way. And like, and going so far to account for every single variable that you think that you can. And of course, at some point, one of them is going to slip through. Murphy's law is going to take place, whatever it is that ultimately proves to you that very little of this, if any, is in your control.
No matter what, you can't control the weather.
Yeah.
You can't control
Exactly.
spontaneous earthquakes, volcanoes. You can't control any of it, right?
Yeah.
But being okay, knowing that you can do your best effort to control what lands in your head, And then you have complete control. I have complete control of what lands in my head. I always have the option to go, wait a minute, was that bullshit, or am I just making something up, or is
Yeah.
that actually what happened objectively? So my
Yeah.
first port of call now, through conditioning and repetition, is when I have a discussion with my wife that isn't necessarily happy and pleasant, I go, wait a second, was I being an asshole? What is the objective truth in this equation? How did I interpret that through my known bullshit filters? And when I say bullshit, I don't mean right or wrong, just for all of the audience. I mean the bullshit that I make up in my head filters,
Of course.
right? Right?
Because
So
your perception is different than your wife's perception.
100%. 100%.
Yep.
But control is a dangerous one, man. It really is. Perfectionism is a big one. It also has elements in imposter syndrome. It has elements in a lot of highly successful people build that based on control and control freakism.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a one-way street. It's a one-way street to burnout. Because you're
it's
literally trying to do the impossible all the time.
That's me in a nutshell. So I hit a wall, and it wasn't like I hit a wall mentally, and I still just kept going. And I was like, I'm just going to keep going. It's just going to keep happening. And my body just gave out. My body's like, all right, you're not going to stop and reassess what you are in control and what you aren't in control, and what matters and what doesn't matter, and address this narrative that you've built in your head. The wheels are going to fall off, and you're not going to go anywhere anymore. Like, it quite literally did. My body just, it just stopped working. It took me over a year to gain 80% range of mobility in my shoulder back again.
I'm not surprised.
Weekly physical therapy. And, it's just an enlarged bursitis sac. And again, but it's like, I've been healthy. I didn't, it's like, I didn't play football. Like, there wasn't something that should have contributed to this. It was stress. It was overworking it. It was manifesting in my body and in my joints and in my muscles and in my gut. You talk about, your understanding and diving into how the gut affects us. It affects us. It's a second brain.
Completely. Yeah. The ENS is insane. It's an incredible science. But it is absolutely, your body will always find a way to pump the brakes when it feels like it needs to.
Without a doubt. Right? And you have to listen to it. The more you ignore it, the further in the hole you're going to get. And ultimately, the more help you're going to need. And the more of these... Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, unfortunately, and look, I'm being an ultra-privileged white guy to state this, but in the Western world, at least, for the most part, we are lauded for our ability to ignore the signals, our ability to just go, fuck it, it'll be all right. Or, I don't care, I can work harder than anyone else. Sorry, man, have you ever been to China? Like, you can't work harder than anyone else. You still sleep. So, but it's these false narratives, right? They go, okay, no, you have to just grind. You're only worth as if
what doesn't kill you, like, makes you builds character kind of thing.
What doesn't kill you pays the therapist.
Yeah.
That's literally how that
that's literally it.
I lived by it. I used to chase the things that wouldn't kill me. And, half the time they almost did. So, and sometimes there's a reason for it. Sometimes there's an effort for it. Our body's engineered to spike, but it's not engineered for prolonged pressure and pain. It's not engineered for prolonged stress. It's not engineered for the grind.
Nope.
I just get so sick of the hustle bro culture that it fucking kills me. It absolutely kills me.
It's terrible. And it perpetuates this really, really ugly narrative that people adopt because it's sexy, because it is I'm going to get rich. And you're like, but you're missing this huge section between where I'm at and where I want to be. Like,
I talk to people that are rich, and I talk to them because they're like, that wasn't remotely satisfying. I need to find something more.
Yep.
All the time.
Yep.
All the time. And it's as old as time, right? Well, not as old as time. It's actually, ironically, a little bit around the time of capitalism. But it's
100%.
but that's the game. And look, I'm all up for it. I have a giant fucking big screen. I love stuff. I'm a minimalist that has very selective tastes. And when I get those tastes, I love stuff, right? I have an immense amount of pointless hobby shit. I love stuff. But my happiness doesn't come from the acquisition of more stuff. And that's the disconnect, because people think somehow an emotional tie happens to the acquisition of, no, you get a dopamine hit because it's accomplishment and it's follow through. Those are just basic programming. They've just conditioned you. When I say they, it sounds a little soapboxy, but the
No, it's true. I mean, it's advertising.
is,
Advertising has conditioned you to keep up with the Joneses.
yeah, of course. It doesn't
Buying a
matter
new
that
pair
the
of shoes
Joneses
is a
had
self-worth.
more.
Yeah, like
I've worked with someone who was like, no, I absolutely couldn't do that. Our lifestyle could be compromised too much, and they were earning well into the 400,000s a year USD. And I'm like,
yep.
what lifestyle mandates that you'll be homeless if you don't spend 400,000 USD a year? Oh, well, when you have this, when you have that, and this many cars and this many houses, and I'm like, but you don't use those 2 houses. You only travel once a year because you can't work. What is the game?
Yeah.
I love to play a game, and I advocate anyone listening, if they're kind of going, well, fuck, am I in this group? Play this game. Worst case scenario, right? If this happens and I stand up for myself, or I draw these boundaries, or I lose this job, or I do this thing, when will I be homeless? When will my family be homeless? When will my family not have money? And I recognize that a lot of people are still in survival. I've been in survival. It's disgusting, but I've eaten street food. I've been in survival. I have no doubt that almost everyone I've ever known has never been in a case of survival, but we believe we are. And what we're actually in is in a state of, please don't compromise my cushy lifestyle. Please don't switch off my heating. Please don't compromise my AC and my free drinks every week. Please don't compromise the volume of food I consume. Please don't compromise my going out every week. Right? And none of that has to do with survival. So I like to play a game called Worst Case Scenario, where it's like, okay, and then, and then, and then. And we eventually always get to a point and go, okay, so what is the real number before you and your family are out on the street and you have to actually survive?
Yeah.
And the answer is never less than 9 months.
Yeah.
Never. Right? Any middle-class family, it's never less than 9 months. Because ultimately you can go, okay, well, within that 9 months, could you find a minimum wage job that you don't like that you could do to pay for things? Yes. All right, well, problem solved. What's the problem? Right? And the answer is, I don't want to because it's uncomfortable.
Well, yeah. It's like people being like, would you flip burgers? And they're like, no. And you're like, but why? And they're usually, whether it's they say it or not, is because it's uncomfortable to them. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. It's beneath me.
I could never be a janitor kind of thing. You're like, I'd never clean toilets. Be like, I'll clean a toilet if that's what needs to be done. Like,
yeah, I mean, you certainly meet people who have, what's the word I'm looking for here? I'm trying to be intentional, but look, being poor, right? You meet people who've been poor and they always have the inevitable attitude. They're either hyper-focused, high achievers, or they're like, fuck it, man, I'll just get money coming in. Who cares?
Yeah.
Because they know they can always get more, right? It's an abundance perspective, not a scarcity mindset. But I've worked with someone who is like, oh, no, I haven't. The job market is terrible. He was convinced the job market was tanked. He hadn't found a job in 10 months. We placed him in 6 weeks. And the reason was this. He had to have the role he had before or better, which was a high-ranking executive role in a market that didn't really have a lot of those roles anymore because he was a fractional CTO in that space. And I'm like, look, unless you're willing to compromise on some stuff, you might not find that. Where can we pivot? Where can we go from there? We pivoted, and within 6 weeks, he had a role that he loved.
Yeah.
He had convinced himself the market was shit, and it becomes an external authority, right? The market is controlling my worth. I don't have to do anything. When in reality, what it was like, no, I'm worried that my family would judge me if I took a step back in role and pay and perception of prestige.
Yep.
It's the same shit. But again, that is where affirmations come in, because you can recondition that thinking once you're 100%. Aware of it.
Yeah. Well, and again, you have to be aware of it. Like, and sometimes it takes somebody such as yourself. It takes introspection. It takes a therapist. It takes a life-changing circumstance to realize these things. And it's an amazing opportunity that is hard to capitalize on, but I think everybody should capitalize on, no matter 100%. What space it's in. Like
100%.
Whether it's a hobby, whether it's a career, like.
Exactly. And look, introspection, 100%. If you're not spending at least 10 minutes a week, people take shits longer than that to get away from their boss at work. 10 minutes a week, just sitting down with a pen and paper or by themselves on a couch at night, anywhere, in a car park, who gives a fuck, with their phone, and going, what do I actually want?
Yep.
Why do I not have it? What do I need? What is the zero to hero journey of that? What is the gap there? And how do I start making really small, uncomfortable steps towards that? And you do that, and after a year, I fucking guarantee you, you're going to be a damn sight closer to where you want to be.
100%,
It's
without
that
a doubt.
simple. 10 minutes. It's just insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
As somebody who's been practicing that for the last year or so,
man.
it 100% is what happens. Because I would argue that most of us are lost in some aspect of life,
mm-hmm.
and trying to figure it out, and trying to, we just don't know. We have ideas, or we've been conditioned and things like that, but we just don't know. So again, taking that time to just explore it, ask why, ask how, ask what, and going from there. And again, seeking guidance if it's necessary, going to like somebody such as yourself and saying, hey, look, I'm lost. I kind of have this general idea. Like, I don't know, but how do I do this? And you're going to be like, great, let's talk about this. Let's talk about this in this way. Like, and you'll be able to lend your expertise that's not necessarily anything that they've ever been exposed to. Or maybe they have, and there's a negative bias towards it, or there's a cultural bias towards it, or whatever it is. It's something that, again, it's uncomfortable, but it allows being uncomfortable allows for growth.
100%. I can't understate. I can't overstate. That enough. I just can't overstate that enough. Growth only happens when you're not comfortable.
Yeah,
that's the only place it happens. If you're a surfer, it only happens when you tackle a bigger wave. If you're a rider, it only happens when you tackle a more aggressive course. It only happens when you're on that edge of uncomfortable and risk, right? You're just sitting there in the even zone. And then there's flow elements and stuff as well. But growth only happens. And that happens for our thoughts, for our thought processes, for our behaviors, for our habits, for our relationships, for our career, for our finances, all of that. It's all only in the space of uncomfortableness. Investing is uncomfortable for some people. Yet they sit there going, my money just keeps disappearing. Well, is it earning you more money? No. Well, then you need to spend 60 hours going and learning how to use your money better.
Yeah.
That's uncomfortable, but go do it.
100%.
It's boring.
And even if you're hiring somebody to do it, you still should be learning about it so that you have a better understanding about it versus blindly just taking the comfortable level to just be like, here you go. Like, I'm going to just give my money to this guy. I don't understand how he lost all of my fortune.
Yeah. Or worse, they do that and then get upset that they lost all their fortune. He's like, I told you this was an outcome. Like,
yeah. Well, this was a risk that was going to happen.
You paid me because I knew more. Exactly. Right.
Yeah.
It's just, comfort and growth are mutually exclusive. I firmly believe that every area of my life that has been uncomfortable has been growth. And one of the big things, my soapbox, my branding, my marketing for my coaching business is growth mindset, innovation at all costs, which is literally like, has your life been fucked up? Great. Then you're more equipped than anyone. Yep. Right. My life has been a dumpster fire, and I have had so many lessons that no one will ever get to experience. And it's well worth it.
I mean, it brought you somewhere. It caused you to, it sucked then. And I'm sure it sucked for a little bit while, or it sucks from time to time at reliving that experience or having that 100%. Memory, like, because it's still there. Like, but that discomfort catapulted you towards certain outcomes, certain goals, certain manifestations.
It made me, and this is an affirmation that I really try and get people to listen to and try and make their own. And I'll probably leave you there because I need to prep for a client call soon. Everything that happened in your life to this point, right up until this very second, has uniquely equipped you to achieve what you want to achieve in these ways.
Yep.
Right? And then you can just fill in the blanks from there. Because everything that has gone wrong or right has uniquely equipped you. You're your own special kind of wonderful, just like everyone else, but your own special kind of wonderful in your own special kind of wonderful way. Even the worst shit has equipped you to get where you want to go in your way. And people need to realize that. Then we move into a growth space. Everything is growth after that.
Yep. Exactly. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I could talk to you for hours.
Always.
Like,
I know, dude.
I love our conversations. I'm like, yo, let's just rap for like a day kind of thing. Cause there's just so much. Anytime
you want to do like a 24-hour charity ramble, I'm on. We'll just
dude, that's a great idea. Yeah.
I'm down. I'm down.
I'm
Cycle
down.
in, get a handful of people that want coaching on here that are willing to be vulnerable, and we'll get some shit done. We'll change lives. I
Sweet.
guarantee it.
I'll even like volunteer as first tribute kind of thing.
Awesome. Awesome, dude. All right, man.
Well,
Well,
Lewis,
I
thank
really
you so
appreciate it.
much. Have a wonderful day. Great client call. Again, thank you so much for the info dump. These are so valuable. Thank you, my man.
All the best, dude. Have a great one. See you later.
You too. Bye. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. Hope you really enjoyed this talk. We've got more coming up this year. You can also check out Lewis's talk from last year, which was super informational and great fun. But yeah, check out the rest of our stuff on YouTube and have a great week.